Hi, I'm Jim Zellick, piano technician. Welcome to my little workshop. Today we have a rather advanced demonstration. I'm going to be talking about the rebuilding process and procedures for an animal called the Bush and Lane Cecilian player piano, which is very unusual and very heavy. The unusual thing about the most unusual thing about the Cecilian action is that it is made of metal. It has a cast iron frame that's about 100 pounds, and it has a modular design, which was very forward thinking for the 1910 through 1921 era. Unfortunately, each module weighs about a pound or a little more than a pound. Basically, the entire action assembled is about 250 pounds, which makes it virtually impossible to remove from the piano by yourself. Um, don't try it. In fact, if you have an opportunity to rebuild a Bush and Lane Cecilian metal player piano action, best advice is to back away slowly or maybe even run away screaming in terror, because it is the most difficult and advanced level of player piano rebuild you will ever encounter. In fact, if you are watching this because you are considering rebuilding a Bush and Lane Cecilian, please make sure that this is not the first piano or first player piano that you have ever rebuilt. It is advanced level, and I'm going to be assuming that you already know quite a few things. I'm going to be skipping quite a few rudimentary steps, such as the procedure for cutting the proper size strips of cloth in order to redo or rebuild a pneumatic, how to remove the old cloth and glue residue from the edges of an old pneumatic. I'm assuming that you've already done that before. If you haven't, please, you're welcome to watch the video. I hope you find it very entertaining and interesting, but I do not encourage you to try the kids. Don't try this at home, okay? Let's start with a basic review. The difference between the Cecilian action and a conventional player action. There are many, many different manufacturers of player piano action assemblies. They used different techniques, different designs, but in the main, most of them have a large vacuum chest that is made of wood that stores the suction from when you, or the negative pressure that you create when you're pushing the pedals, actuating the large bellows underneath. And that there's a valve control mechanism, a low pressure valve control mechanism that connects to the tracker bar, and each time a hole in the player piano roll comes by a particular opening in the tracker bar, that actuates a valve. The valve causes high pressure to close the pneumatic, which then actuates the key, makes the key sound. I don't know if that sounds complicated or not, but that's really all there is to it. I mean, this was designed in the mid 1800s, and it was really an engineering marvel of automation at the time. The problem is with Cecilian is they decided, we're going to try to do this a different way. They came up with a modular approach, which is actually very progressive. These days we do all kinds of things in modular ways. It's a good idea, but the way they chose to implement it using cast metal components is extremely heavy, extremely difficult, and it involves a whole lot of extra work when you're trying to rebuild it. I have here Exhibit A. This is number 41 from the particular piano that I'm rebuilding. This is a fairly conventional, which if you have rebuilt player pianos, you recognize this bottom bellows as a typical pneumatic assembly that you might find on any player piano. We need to clean it off a little bit. It's got some dust from the ages. This is from 1921. It's been sitting in this piano for 103 years at the time I'm making this video. And as a result, this cloth impregnated with rubber is no longer useful. It is completely porous. Air just flows right through it, and it has assumed consistency like tar paper. We also have for each modular unit a complete valve assembly. Unfortunately, the valve assembly has to be removed. You have to completely disassemble this in order to rebuild it. And the disassembly process, as we will demonstrate, as you will find out, is destructive. You end up having to remake certain parts like the valve pouch. The valve pouch is glued between two layers in here, and the only way to get it apart to remove it is to destroy the valve pouch. Let's start with a quick disassembly here. This is the finger, which I think is very descriptive, right? You play a piano with your fingers, and this device is going to actuate a piano note. So why not call the actuator a finger, right? I keep looking at the wrong little screen here. You're my lens. The lens is not over here. Okay. Whoops. Yikes. Okay. We are going to take these two little tiny screws and put this device over here, which I believe, yes, that can be seen. So there's the finger. Now we're going to remove the clamp toe. This actually clamps the unit in place, mates it to the big vacuum chamber. There are 88 ports, and each one of those little ports mates up here with a piece of cork, a cork bushing, if you will, or gasket. That's something that I skipped here at the beginning. I will go back to it after I remove this clamp toe. Technically, there is no reason that you really must remove the clamp toe in order to rebuild this, because it's not blocking anything. I remove it because I like to clean it and then put it back on. This particular customer, and I'm doing this this work for a customer, a good client and good friend, he has indicated that he wants this to look as original as possible. He's not looking for it to be restored so that it looks like something that just came out of a factory, and I like that. I personally approve of that. So here we go. We've now removed the finger and the clamp toe. Now we have, this is called the signal tube. The signal tube is absolutely critical, a very important, very critically important piece of the whole mechanism. This is where the signal comes to actually make the pneumatic close and actuate the key, the sound. Now, inside here, there is a little beast called a bleeder cup, at least I call it a bleeder cup, that translates the high pressure found inside the bottom here into a low pressure that can be used for signaling. I don't know if this is going to work. About 50% of the time it works. If you pull back, this is held in place by a piece of cork that is old and is just going to fall apart. But I want to try to pull the bleeder cup out. So I'm going to pull it like that. And guess what? It did not work. Okay, well, this is going to be one of the 50% of the time. We're going to, let's see, show this to, that does work. Wow, that's kind of cool. Okay. Our bleeder cup is up here in the top. So I am going to remove some of this wonderful old nasty cork. We're going to have to clean all of the pieces, remove all of the old cork eventually. But I want to get the bleeder cup to come out. There it goes. Bleeder cup has come out. I'm now going to clean that off a little bit with my thumb, and I'm going to put it over here. So now we have our, it's going to be interesting to see if I can keep the names of these parts straight. The finger, the clamp toe, the bleeder cup, and now the signal tube. At this point, I like to clean the signal tube a little bit as well, because we're going to be putting fairly early in the process, we're going to be mating a new piece of cork to this, and I'm going to glue that in place and let it dry a little bit. By the time it takes me about an hour to do this entire operation, so you can figure about 88 hours if you work at my speed. I'm not the fastest worker, I'm a little bit methodical. I know people who go faster than I do, and more power to them. Okay. This is something that you're going to need. If you are contemplating doing this job, you're going to need a complete set of these replacement replacement cork pieces. And we take these apart gently, one at a time. We don't want to damage them. And they go, let's see, yep, actually you can see that in my upper camera. That's good. I'm gonna have some post-production work to do here. Okay, I actually just, I just ruined this one. So I'm going to set that puppy aside and use a different one. I only have 100 of these, so I don't have the luxury of being able to ruin a lot. Okay, there we go. And in the middle of one of these major cork gaskets, we have a little piece that mates with the business end of this. There we go. Can we see this? Yes. Is this visible? Yes. Comes up here. Now I'm going to glue that in place. This is an area where you may find differences of opinion among technicians, what kind of glue to use inside this assembly. I have used many different kinds of glue. The most reliable and absolutely permanent way to make sure that cork will bond and stay bonded forever to metal is super glue. And I tried using super glue for a while and it was okay, but it's incredibly messy and bonds skin instantly, and it's really difficult to work with. And so I went all the way in the other direction. And this is where we might find a little controversy. I use old-fashioned Elmer's rubber cement, which is not an aggressive glue. It's the sort of glue that scrapbookers use to put their old pictures in their scrapbooks so that they can be at some point relatively easily removed. But I like it because this gives me just the right amount of adhesion to parts that are actually held together by screws, screw pressure, metal to metal, when they are reassembled. So I find I'll put that together, and then I'll use the two screws as temporary locators to make sure that it stays in the proper position. Now we're gonna, and see the rubber cement is also very forgiving in terms of it doesn't bond right away. It takes a while for it to dry and get sticky. Now we have, I'm going to hold this up, hopefully this can be seen. This is where the bleeder cup is going to sit inside the foot of this little interface, if you wish. And I'm going to set it over here to dry very gently. Now we're going to turn our attention back to the main assembly. We now have only one big piece that needs to come off in order to rebuild this. We don't, actually. That was wishful thinking. This is divided into three pieces. We have the top two pieces contain the valve itself. And you can see the very top of the valve, the leather facing of the valve, through the top. This bottom is the pouch cup, and all it is a pouch cup. It doesn't really do anything else other than the critical. It receives. It is the well. It's actually the communication chamber. It's not just a valve cup. It's the communication chamber. You get the pressure comes out through here to the tracker bar, and anytime a hole is encountered in the player piano roll, the signal is sent through this bottom hole into this bottom area. I'm sort of not speaking clearly right now, sorry. We have to take these top 4 screws out. They're going to be fairly tight. They've been in there for a long time. This unit is from 1921, and as I'm recording this video is the year 2023, so you can do the math and see how long this has been put together. I can tell you for sure it has never been taken apart since 1921. There we go. You need to apply a significant amount of pressure and be fairly aggressive with these. You do not wish to strip the heads of the screws. When we take this out, we are actually, when we take this out, when we take these 4 screws out, we are disconnecting the valve chamber, which is the top 2 segments or sections, from the pouch cup at the bottom. They will not just fall apart because they are glued together using an interfacing piece of one of these, one of these corks. We will be replacing the one that we destroy using this one in the reassembly step. Unfortunately, we're really far from the reassembly step right now. Okay, we're going to take these 4 screws out. Now, depending on the condition of the action, you may or may not wish to rebuild the valve itself. The valve is, we're going to briefly cover this. It is a piece of wood, round, about 1/8 of an inch thick. It's that simple. It's just 1/8 of an inch thick piece of wood that has been punched out into a perfectly round shape, and it has a leather facing on the top and a leather facing on the bottom. If those leather facings are still in really good condition, as they are in this particular piano, it does not need to be rebuilt. On the other hand, when is this ever going to be a part to this level again? There are many technicians, and I don't disagree, that say that since you have it apart this far, you're doing a rebuild, you might as well do a complete rebuild and go ahead and reface that valve. I'm not going to do that today in this demonstration, but I have to admit it's a good idea. We are going to now split this apart. Sometimes it requires a tap from the hammer to convince it. In this case, it doesn't. Now, what happens here is the valve pouch, which is made of a very fine leather, is glued to this bottom valve pouch plate. And when we pull it apart, we're going to tear it in 2 pieces. How much it tears apart, you can actually hear it. It sounds like tissue paper, and it has the consistency of tissue paper. This is or used to be leather, and it just doesn't, it won't hold air anymore. This is completely porous. Now, we want to be very careful at this point because we are going to recover this disc that is glued to the remains of the leather pouch. And you see that this is a locator disc that makes sure that the valve stem that's just glued onto one of the leather facings. We're looking at the valve, by the way, at this point. Let's see. And the valve stem. And we're going to be removing the old leather In this case, they did not use cork for the interface, and this leather is actually in pretty good shape, but we are going to replace it anyway. We are going to replace it with this piece. So the decision to replace is based on the idea that I've done 41 others on this piano so far in pursuit of the 88 that will be required to be rebuilt, and some of them have been in really, really bad condition, and I want them to all be the same. I want all the valve adjustments to be the same. The physical thickness of the replacement cork is slightly thicker than the original leather, and so I want them all to behave exactly the same way, and I want them all to be adjustable to the same level. So this is a mess. This is one of the reasons that it takes so long to do this job, is you have to be very careful about removing everything here. When you put it back together, you need it to be airtight, absolutely airtight. Otherwise, the last step that we perform, which is the test, is going to fail, and you're going to have a bunch of taking it apart again, and what would you call re-disassembly? No, I guess, yeah, it is kind of like re-disassembly, but it's a hassle. You don't want that to happen. In fact, I make it a point of going slow to make sure that I get it right every time. On this particular piano, I have not had one fail testing yet. Let's hope this isn't the first. Okay, so here's our disc, our valve housing, which still needs a bunch of cleaning up. I'm going to be taking this over to the belt sander to do a little final cleanup step. And here we have our valve pouch, or our valve pouch plate, which is also the main communication plate. And this has 3 screws holding it to the pneumatic. These screws are going into wood, so I treat them with some gentleness. We want them to be, we don't want, in no situation do we wish these to strip out. So we gently take them apart. I should have closed my rubber cement before now. Okay. Now this is simply held in place by a cork gasket inside. There's really nothing else going on, so we can be fairly quick about cutting this apart. Unfortunately, the gasket just gets destroyed. Half of it is left here, half of it is left there. All of it has to be removed, and we will be replacing it during the reassembly step after we finish rebuilding the pneumatic itself. And again, I'm going to clean this up a little bit with the sander. I'm just taking the main parts of it off. We don't have to worry about the felt fragments getting down inside here, because we're going to be removing this and any debris that got down inside. Now, that is another good point. If you are not going to split this further apart in order to rebuild the valve, you want to make sure you don't get any extra grot and debris and fragments of leather or whatever down inside these main vacuum holes. Because if you get anything down inside here, it will interfere potentially with the smooth and proper operation of the valve. And we can't have that. All right. I'm going to be cutting out a lot of little pieces of this. We're going to kind of do what they do on the home channel, where they show all these home renovations, where they'll go into the bathroom and they'll say, well, we're going to have to remove this here old tile, and we're going to have to prep the surface and then put in this grout and put some new tile in, and we'll be right back after the commercial. And you go to the commercial, and 2 minutes later you come back and it's all done, right? and they're wearing the same clothes even though it's really the next day. And they sort of imply that some of these jobs only take 2 minutes to actually take place, when in fact it takes 3 guys all day, and they're a ball of sweat by the time they're done. But hey, that's okay. We're going to employ that same kind of trickery to lull you into thinking that this job is a lot easier than it is. No, I'm not actually. This job is not easy. There's nothing easy about this job. Okay, now we finally have what is essentially a conventional player piano pneumatic. This is what you find 88 of in a normal player piano that doesn't have all of these metal constructs involved. It doesn't always have this notch here, but they're fairly similar. I'm going to block these 2 main air holes and demonstrate that this is just incredibly porous. It isn't. If this were working properly, we would not be able to open and close it. The air pressure would work. So what I'm going to do is try to peel off the old rubberized cloth. This is something you may or may not wish to do. In the old days, when I first was rebuilding player pianos, the first 20 of them or so that I did, I would have just taken this piece over to the belt sander and just taken off a little bit of wood along with the cloth and the glue on each side. And it's not that fast. You still have to be very precise because you want to avoid removing too much of the wood. Nowadays, I make a quick stab, because I'm older, a lot older. I make a quick stab at seeing if maybe some of this will peel off. And the advantage there, if it will, is you get to preserve more of the wood, take less of it off. Now this one does seem to be peeling. Some of them from this piano have not peeled at all, and I've simply had to go to the belt sander. There was no other choice. They tend to weather and age at different rates, and I don't really know exactly why, but it's just a non-uniform thing. So what I'm going to do here, because this has changed from cloth that was impregnated with rubber into essentially tar paper, I'm just going to slit this with my screwdriver. It sounds like tar paper as well. It's not cloth anymore. And I've had people, actually students, call it tar paper because that's what the stuff that you use. Now here's the debris that came through the little holes when we were doing our initial cleanup. No problem, that comes right off. The hinge in this particular case, we got lucky. The hinge is in excellent condition. There's really nothing we have to do to this hinge. Many times we have to actually either replace the hinge or rebuild it, or at best just reglue it. I'm going to take these 3 pieces over to the sander now, and I'll be back. Have fun. Okay, we're back. There we have our somewhat cleaned up valve pouch plate, our somewhat cleaned up, sort of, valve housing, and our cleaned up pneumatic. At this point, we're going to select a piece of cloth, replacement cloth. I am using, for this one, plastic cloth. You may, depending on the requirements of your job, the ideals you're trying to, whether you're trying to do an authentic, original restoration, good luck if you are. My particular client has agreed to allow me to use some modern materials, such as the plastic cloth, which I'm very grateful for. I'm going to use a little jig. I built this jig in about 2 minutes before I started, or when I was at the initial stages, in order to hold this together. You may use a jig, you may not use a jig. It is your choice. And we're going to start gluing this. Now, there's one hard and fast rule in player piano rebuilding. This is just like gospel. You must do this. This was on the third tablet of commandments, the one that was broken when Moses was. Anyway, yeah, you must use the proper glue for the type of material that you are gluing on. So we're going to use this stuff, which is called plastic glue. Yeah, which I obtained this from a gentleman in New Jersey named John Tuttle. John Tuttle is a treasure. He is like the greatest storehouse of knowledge and experience for player piano rebuilding in the world. I'm really hoping that John Tuttle remains healthy and lives forever, because I don't know what we would do without him. He provided me the sourcing for just about everything. He had this set of essential, he had this set of essential cork pieces that we are using up. He had the correct kind of plastic cloth, and he had also a set of instructions which were somewhat incomplete, much appreciated. But that's one of the reasons that I'm making this demonstration, is to fill in the holes in the instructions. One of the biggest holes was the final procedure for creating the valve pouch. We're coming up to that soon, so don't go away. I'm not going to really show the gluing procedure because I'm assuming you know how to do this. If you don't, it's pretty simple. It uses skills that you learned in first grade. All right, there we have a fairly well recovered pneumatic. We are going to perform the same test that we did before. Now when we block the air, we see that it is completely sealed. I'm sorry, I keep looking at the wrong screen. When we block the air, we will see that it is completely sealed. Okay. So this pneumatic is going to function properly if we reassemble the valve assembly properly. I'm going back to the good old-fashioned rubber cement, and I know that there's a few piano technicians who are having a heart attack when they see me doing this, but you know, I tell you what, it works. Okay, we're going to put that puppy on there, and then we're going to turn over our lower plate, our valve pouch plate, and we're going to make sure that it has a nice airtight seal against this cork. And then we're going to take our 3 wood screws, and all these screws we put back in using our fingers at first, finger tight, by feel. You need to develop the feel to know that you've got them in the right place before you pick up the screwdriver. And again, this is going into 100-year-old wood, more than 100 years old. So we want to be very gentle and make sure that we do not strip these screws. We want to compress the felt the proper amount to make sure that we have a nice airtight joining, and we want to go no farther than that. Okay, perfect. Now we can actually do, if you want, one final test of the airtightness to make sure that we don't have any additional leakage. That was optional. We really didn't have to do that. Now the real fun begins. This is the part that frightens a lot of people. We are going to have to make a valve pouch, and the valve pouch is the key to this note operating properly. If the valve pouch is not properly made and installed, it will not function right and the key will not work, and you will have failed in your efforts. Now I have a number of pieces of suitable leather here, which I have verified using a light table are in fact not leaking. This type of leather frequently has pinholes in it that are invisible to the naked eye, and that will cause the note to not operate properly, and you don't want that to happen. You need a good piece of leather. Now, making them a little bit oversized is okay, because it's easy to trim off the extra when you're done. And also I like having some extra because I can do a final visual verification after it's reassembled. I'll show you this. And if I have overlap on 2 or 3 sides, I know that it did not fold or bend or somehow scrunch up in a way that's going to cause it to not operate properly. I'm using as a cutting template this little piece of cork that has the smaller sized hole. These are identical, by the way. The larger sized hole and the smaller sized hole. The larger size we are going to actually put on here to our valve housing. But meanwhile, we want to very exquisitely gently hold this in place, and that's not very pretty or artistic, is it? There we go. We're drawing the big hole in the middle as a guide for gluing this disc back on, where to glue the disc. Okay. I'm now going to cut along the lines that I made using my handy utility knife with the sharp blade. And there is our candidate pouch. Now, this is a very tricky part, and you will ruin some pouches as you learn how to do this. But I can't explain how this is done. It's just a matter of experience to get the punch in exactly the right place. Sorry. Oh my, all my screws just went all over the place. Okay. Like I say, you are going to end up ruining a couple of pouches while you learn how to do that. Oops, I didn't get this one exactly right. There we go. All right, there we have what I would say is a good-looking candidate pouch so far. You can see we have a whole bunch of little holes punched here where I've done previous ones. I'm going to use a nice clean piece of wood right now, and we are going to use our awl. These are the screw holes. We want to pre-cut these screw holes because we're not going to try to force the blunt-ended screws through. How we doing? I'm having fun. Now we have the most perilous point. We are actually going to be gluing this pouch onto the pouch cup. And if we get this wrong, the pouch is ruined, we start over, we create another one. So we're going to try very hard not to get it wrong. And to be fair, I've done, quite a few of these before, so my probability of success is higher now than it was when I did my first one. It is critically important that we get a vacuum seal between the pouch and this plate. And of course, we're creating another situation where if this pouch ever has to be replaced, it kind of has to be destroyed on disassembly. And that includes if you ever need to do any service on the valve, you're probably going to destroy the pouch and have to create a new one. There we go. That pouch is laid in place in what appears to be pretty good alignment. Now, the critical step. This tool, which was actually custom created for me by John Tuttle, you can get generic ones, but this is a pouching tool. And the beauty of this, the one nice thing, the one thing that I like about the Cecilian action is that you have these metal bowls that are created that is in the exact shape of the pouch that you need to create. So we are going to put this on here, mate it, and we are going to firmly press down to stretch the leather into the pouch form that we need. Now, if I did this just right, the round circle, circles are round, the circle that I drew on the pouch is going to be just about in the exact middle. Oh, look at that. It's upside down. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter that it's upside down. I actually did that. I actually put it in upside down. I can't believe I did that. Okay. We are going to glue this in place, and I'm going to end up taping another segment on another unit. Okay. Interesting. Wow. I can't believe I messed that up. I may leave some of this where I'm talking about I can't believe I messed that up in, but I won't be exactly explaining what I'm talking about. Now we glue on our valve locator. We now have a perfectly created pouch, and we are going to put this puppy on, and then we're going to flip it over and mate the two together. Okay. Now, the one thing that I am not going to do, which was done in the original construction of this unit, is I'm not going to put any glue between this gasket and the pouch itself. I'm going to leave those to just seal naturally through the pressure of the screws. That is my choice. You may consider it right or wrong as you wish. Now, we have to get this little nub, this valve stem, if you will, directly into this guide. If we just set it directly, it will just naturally go there. And then we have to locate it so that the screws are going to go in the right position. This is critical. We are using our fingers, using the sensitivity of our fingertips, and we're going to visualize we are going through the cork and then through the pre-cut hole that we use the awl to make in the leather, and then we're going down through into the yes, the bottom plate. Okay, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to talk and visualize this at the same time, I just found out. Now we're going to go to the opposite corner and do the same thing. If we get this right, the valve is going to work beautifully. If we don't get this right, the valve is not going to work, and we're going to have to take it all the way back apart and put it back together again correctly. I have never had to, on this particular piano, I have never had to take one back apart and redo it at this stage. However, there is a first time for everything. Okay, I'm feeling still. Okay, good, good. That corner, gonna do the last corner now. Again, each one very slowly, very carefully. Wow, we've been taping for 1 hour and 22 minutes already. Okay, that looks good. We are now going to employ the large screwdriver to put a little bit more tension on these screws. Feels good, looks good. Now I'm going to press down into the bench in order to get some final tightening. It is so critical that these seal well. We do need to have a little bit of muscle power needs to be applied here. These screws are going into metal, so they will not strip out unless you are really strong, stronger than I. I'm going to do a little bit of final cleanup here. We have just completed the reassembly of this unit. We are almost to the point where we can test it. I'm just going to do the quick trimming of the extra valve pouch leather. Good. I have the extra visible on 3 sides, which makes me feel warm and fuzzy and optimistic that our test is going to work perfectly. All right. Now it's time to reinstall the bleeder cup, which creates our low pressure signaling our low pressure signaling airstream. We're going to call it an airstream. Now this is now glued in place in an orientation that's going to allow communication between the bleeder cup and the opening of our signal line. I'll put this puppy back on using the 2 screws. All right, this is now a testable unit. It's almost completely reinstalled. We have this little piece of felt to glue on here, which we will do very last. We have to put our clamp toe back on and our finger back on. Before we do any of that, we are going to do a quick test, and I don't have a test jig handy here. I'm just going to use lung power. What I'm going to do is create a little bit of suction here. The idea is as long as this is closed, I'm going to close it just with my finger, this should remain open. When I remove my finger, the valve should open and this should close. And then when I put my finger back on, this should open up back up again. That's the correct operation of the valve. Now, do you want to make some bets as to whether it's going to work? I'm betting it's going to work. I'm going to bet you a nickel, 5 cents, to anybody watching this that this is going to work. Ready? All right, we're going to try it. All right, all of you owe me a nickel. Please send to my address. No, this works really well. That's perfect operation right there. That is great. So that is a properly redone valve pouch. All right, I'm just going to continue and complete. Oops, we have a camera battery here in our work field. I am going to continue to put this back together, these remaining parts, and then we are going to set this one aside and move to the next unit, which will be number 42, since I'm doing these sequentially. I hope that you have enjoyed this video and found this demonstration to be entertaining. And again, if you are contemplating doing this job yourself, actually rebuilding a Cecilian player action, I would say you are absolutely crazy, but you know, more power to you. Thanks, Jim Selleck, piano technician. See you next time.